Welcome to today's USP and Pharmatech webinar, PCM for Drug Substance API. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to join us. Next. Each registration is unique and grants the right for the individual registrant only to view this webinar. Sharing this webinar with unregistered viewers, either during or after its performance, violates Pharmatech Associates' copyright and is prohibited. Next. If you have not already done so, we ask that you take some time to read the Pharmatech Associates course disclaimer. You can download this presentation, including the disclaimer, from your USP Education account. Please follow the instructions in your confirmation email to download the presentation. Next. We have two presenters for today's webinar. Rohit Lokhande, Senior Continuous Manufacturing Manager at USP. Richard Steiner, PCM Practice Lead at Pharmatech Associates. Presenting first today is Richard.
Yes, hello everyone out there. Thanks for the kind introduction. I also happy to have my colleague Rohit together with me today talking about continuous manufacturing, but the drug substance part. We have already had a couple of webinars this year on continuous manufacturing, but this time Rohit and I will take a deep dive in drug substance manufacturing, what is particular different to drug products, what is similar, and what can be also related to the ICH Q13. So Rohit and I will walk you through to our topic, and I will hand over now to Rohit.
All right. Thank you, Richard, for setting up the context and walking us through the agenda. And thank you all the participants for joining out of their busy schedule. So let's get started with the webinar. So everybody knows that the definition of a pharmaceutical continuous manufacturing, it's given in the ICH Q13 document that says that a process is a continuous manufacturing process if it involves continuous feeding of input materials and then subsequent removal of the product or the intermediates. But it is also important to acknowledge that the guidelines also states that the process must have a minimum of 2 connected unit operations featuring the flow of material from one operation to the another. So for manufacturing of a simple API to be considered continuous, it could feature continuous feeding of reagents that will undergo reaction in a reactor, followed by a quenching, separation, or any downstreaming step. So we'll talk a little bit more about these unit operations. But the one thing that I wanted to mention that we had a small animation video that we made that showed how a typical continuous manufacturing for an API looks like. However, because of the technical glitches, we couldn't include the video or the animation video into the presentation. However, that video would be made available to all the participants, and it will be available in next few days or a week to all the registered participants on their USP education background. Can we go on to the next slide, Richard?
Yes, and I can also just highlight that this video is worthwhile watching.
Sure. So when we talk about the advantages of the continuous manufacturing, we know that continuous manufacturing or the continuous flow chemistry, as we call it, have gained significant attention for the manufacturers, especially in the pharmaceutical and API industries, for several reasons. Now, we know that there are numerous benefits of continuous manufacturing, but here are some of the most prominent advantages that sets apart the continuous manufacturing from the traditional batch manufacturing. So for example, the continuous manufacturing is also an enabling technology. So as you know, that enabling technology is nothing but the technologies or the innovations or the techniques that basically enhances various processes of the system. So in the context of pharmaceutical manufacturing, the enabling technology plays a crucial role in enhancing the safety of your processes, the efficiency and the quality. Now, when I'm saying it enhances the efficiency, it's not only the process efficiency, but also the your operational efficiency. So like reducing the downtime between the batches and batch and manual handling of your entire production processes. The another advantage of the continuous manufacturing is that it's very flexible. So, for example, some of the generic companies, they would always have different products, different demands based on the what drugs they are making and what's the demand in the market. So the continuous manufacturing has the flexibility to make changes on the fly, and you can easily scale up or scale down your processes based on the demand for that one particular drug. And last but not the least is the cost saving. Now I know that many of you would argue that the cost saving is may not be the advantages of continuous manufacturing, but my colleague here, Richard, would walk you through some of the important aspects of how a continuous manufacturing would be able to help save you cost going forward.
Thanks, Rohit. I will touch on this cost saving part and the business case assessment for this kind of technology later in the presentation.
Yeah. Okay. Now let's look at the different modes of continuous manufacturing operations for the with respect to the API. Now API continuous manufacturing can be conducted as a continuous or uninterrupted process, which is also called as end-to-end, or it can be performed as a hybrid process that basically combines the elements of both continuous as well as batch infrastructure. Now here are some of the points that can be considered or taken into account when one is developing a process in continuous. So for example, the hybrid manufacturing hybrid process makes more sense for the manufacturers that already have existing well-established existing batch infrastructure. However, the end-to-end continuous manufacturing would make sense for the manufacturers who would want to set up a new facilities or want to market a new molecule. However, it is important to note that the hybrid or the end-to-end approach of FM manufacturing may also depend on the cost considerations and the technical expertise that one could have within their organization. But it is important to note that CM technology offers significant advantages and aligns with the pharmaceutical industry's goal of producing safe and effective medicines. So now that we have seen the advantages of the continuous manufacturing, what are different more types of CM approaches. Now let's take a look at how a typical API continuous manufacturing would look like, taking an example from ICH Q13. Can we go on to next slide? Yeah. So this is the figure here that you see is the typical API continuous manufacturing process that is adopted from the ICH Q13 document. As you can see, the process consists of the unit operations that can be characterized as having two plug flow reactors, two liquid extractors, and then the product isolation is considered to be performed in batch. So now if you want to break this continuous manufacturing line into individual unit operations, this is what a simplified continuous manufacturing would look like. But if you still further want to break it down to the understand the simple components of the continuous manufacturing, Richard, can we go on to the next slide, please?
Yep.
So this is how a typical continuous manufacturing would look like for an API. So as depicted in the figure, any basic flow system for the API or for in chemical reactions would involve few basic components like fluid reagent delivery systems, the reactors, the analysis component, and then the downstream equipment. Now, the selection of the relevant component depends on the process requirements and the specific type of chemical transformation that is being carried out. So, for example, the choice of reactor is basically influenced by the phase of the reaction mass. So, So the PFR would be the choice of a reactor for a liquid-liquid or gas-liquid reactions, while C star would be a choice for chemical transformation that involves formation of slurry or managing the slurries or solids, and also the slow reactions. However, it is important to note that this is not the universal rule, and other factors such as heat transfer, mass transfer also play a crucial role in understanding what type of component and reactors are that needs to be selected. So therefore, understanding having a comprehensive understanding of this component is very essential to make informed choices in selecting the right tools. So let's take a look at what are some of the technical solutions available for these components. Not on the vendor side, but on a very high level kind of things.
Okay.
So can we go on to the next slide, Richard? So we all know that continuous manufacturing offers chemists a level of reproducibility that is hard to match. With sometimes hard to match with manual batch chemistry, and basically that will help. That usually helps in reliable scale-ups, because there are many challenges when you want to scale up a process in a batch from small scale to the larger scale. However, this is only possible, in continuous manufacturing if the variables of the reactions are accurately known. So in this case, the reaction temperature, concentration, or the stoichiometric ratios of the different reagent or the residence time would be variables that could be important when you're developing a process. Now we know that both stoichiometric ratios and residence time play a crucial role in deciding the transformation, the reaction rates, and everything. So what if you're not using the correct fluid or reagent delivery system? So these are some of the possible hurdles that you may face if you're not using the right pump. So either you're putting an unknown or wrong molar ratios of the reagents. When you're putting wrong flow rates, you're basically ending up with the wrong residence time. And the third and the fourth one is basically, I have experienced myself when I used to work in the lab, that reactions that should have worked may not, with basically no explanations, and sometimes the reactions work, but when you try to reproduce them next time, because something was wrong with your pumps, you're not able to reproduce those results, and ultimately this would end up in scale-up failure. So that's the reason pumps are sometimes referred to as a heart of the reaction systems. So there are different types of pumps that are available for CM applications. So few of the basics are like basic pumps are like HPLC, syringe pump, Tiara pumps, or peristaltic pumps. But the use and selection of these pumps mainly depends on the flow rate requirements, the pressure requirements, and the fluid that is being pumped. So let's take a little more look at the functioning or the basic principles of these pumps in the next slide.
So if you will, those pumps are what the loss in rate feeders and also the dosage part for continuous systems. They are the heartbeat of those systems, if you will.
Yeah. So here is the quick comparison of the four basic types of pumps that are being used in the continuous manufacturing setups. As the first and most commonly used pumps are the HPLC or piston pumps. We that those are reciprocating pumps, positive displacement pumps. They basically are favorites because of their precise flow rates, flow controls, and they are able to operate at very high pressure applications. Basically the piston pumps excel in delivering precise and controlled flow rate irrespective of pressure, which is critical in maintaining the state of control or the steady flow of your reactants during your process. The syringe pump, on the other hand side, are the alternate cheap option for the HPLC pumps, and the syringe pumps are basically used for pumping the fluids at very flow rates, at very low flow rates and pressure. So they again, as mentioned, they can be an alternate cheap option for the HPLC pumps. The next are the gear pumps. These are typically these are also positive displacement pumps, and they are the primary choice of the pumps for the scale-up applications. However, many of you must be knowing that the gear pumps are usually characterized by the pump curve. So the higher the pressure, the lower the flow rate. So, but this can be basically taken care of by using the mass flow controller or mass flow meter and trying to loop them with the pump motor, wherein changes in pressure can automatically adjust the RPM of the pump to achieve the desired flow rates. And the last but not the least are the peristaltic pumps. Now, these are typically used for the low pressure applications. However, they are excellent in pumping solids or the slurries. So if your reagents are not soluble in your solvents, these pumps you can utilize these pumps to pump the slurries. However, they do have certain restrictions with respect to the pressure application. So you have to make sure that you're operating at not higher pressures with respect to that. And also the tubing comes in different MOCs and IDs and polymers. So depending on your slurry and the weight percent slurries, you can select the appropriate tubings based on your applications. So now that we have looked at the pumps, let's move to the next component of the flow.
But most likely the peristaltic pumps, they're good for single-use applications. If you can exchange the tubings easily. Yeah. So this is maybe for those products.
That's
important.
True. Yeah. So the next component, important component in any continuous manufacturing is the reactors. Now, any engineer would be able to tell you there are 3 different types of reactors in this world. So like batch reactor, plug flow reactor, and then continuously stirred tank reactor. So these are the very basic categories of the flow reactors. Out of these 3, the PFRs and the CSTRs are considered as a continuous reactors. Now we know that an ideal PFR has no axial mixing, but perfect ideal mixing. But again, as mentioned in the previous slide, the choice of reactors is usually influenced by the phase of the reaction mass. So like plug flow reactors are, I'm sorry, there's lights or something is wrong with my lights. The plug flow reactors are the primary selection for liquid-liquid or gas-liquid reactions, while CSTRs are favored for slurry, solid, slurry liquid, or slow, typically a slow reactions, given their capacity to manage slurries and slow reactions. However, the other considerations such as heat transfer, mass transfer also plays an important role in determining what type of reactors one should be using. So in the next slide, you'll be able to see a quick comparison for certain aspects with this, for PFR and CSTRs. Each reactor has their own limitations and advantages. So like for example, the PFRs, they have very narrow residence time distribution that makes them good for the use of, wherein the heat transfer requirements are very important. So like for exothermic reactions. However, for the CSTRs, the RTDs are broad, but you can potentially narrow the RTD when you have more number of CSTRs in a series. The PFRs can they have the low solid handling capabilities and they get easily clogged as compared to the CSTR. So and when you talk in terms of the heat transfer, so like the PFRs are excellent in heat transfer, but again it depends on the material of construction that you're using as compared to the CSTRs. So these are few factors that the few aspects that you could consider, depending on the chemical transformations, what are the requirements of your chemical transformations, and then accordingly choose a reactor for your reactions. Now, other than these, there are also other reactors such as packed bed, photochemical, electrochemical reactors. But the use of the reactors, again, depending on what chemical transformation that you're being carried out.
As a continuous manufacturing aficionado, I was missing screw reactors actually on your table. So how about this type of reaction systems?
I think that's a good point, Richard. I think the screw reactors, yes, I mean that could be another choice of the reactor. So basically, screw reactor can be used as the pump and as well as the reactor. So like I think that's another advantages. But that's a good one to know that, yes, we can use screw reactors as a reactor and as a pump, and especially for the slurry applications, that would be really helpful. So thanks for mentioning that.
No worries. I mean, I also, it's important to highlight again, but not just the pumps, but also these reactors, material selections are one of the big criteria, yeah.
Oh, yes.
In characterizing such a reaction system, yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Because I think most of the APIs, like the API chemistry, involves the use of corrosives, highly basic acid conditions. So the choice of the MOC, that also plays a crucial role in deciding, what type of reactors can be used. So yeah, that's another good point here. So here, this is a very nice table that I always use for, like, whenever I have a question of, what type of reactor I should use. So like the table on the right hand side basically tells you, the certain types of chemical transformations and what reactor is suited. So for example, if you look at the CSTRs, the Grignard reactions, although they are exothermic, they're preferred in the CSTRs because that involves feeding of magnesium and, formation of slurries. The lithiation reactions can be performed in the PFR or in the CSTRs, depending on, because some of the lithiations tend to form, solids, after the during the intermediate stages. So the CSTR could also be a choice of the reactor for lithiation reactions. However, again, managing the exotherms could be a a challenge over there. So you can basically depending on the requirements of your process, you can choose the reactor. But this table just gives you a very high level, quick evaluation of what type of chemical transformation is being carried out in what type of reactors. On the left hand side, you see that's one of the diagram that I found in the ACS fall 2023 conference made. Where they have basically highlighted, which reactions have been successfully executed using continuous manufacturing based on, I think, more than 1,600 publications. So as you can see, CC complete reactions have been most published in the continuous manufacturing, and there are other types of reactions. So you can use this as a guideline if you want to start, developing a process based on what type of chemical transformation that you are doing. On the next slide, this is again, a quick comparison of, different reactors, their MOCs and, operating range. So like, for example, you see the PFR has the wide operating range with respect to the temperature and the MOCs. So you can go as low as -70 to, 250 degrees, and pressure is up to 1,000 bars as well, 200 bars to 1,000 bars as well. So, and all of these reactors can be used on a pilot and commercial scale. The packed bed, you can use it on a commercial scale, but there are limitations when in terms of, how big can your column could be. So there are still limitations on that side. But for the most of the reactors, there are pilot and commercial scale applications available in the literature. So now that we have seen the fluid reagent delivery system, we have seen the reactor. The next important part in continuous manufacturing is the analysis. So the process analytical technology is something that goes hand in hand with the continuous manufacturing, and that the use of PAT can highly improve your efficiency and minimize the personal hazards with respect to sampling as well, when you are talking about implementing the PAT on a manufacturing scale. Now, although like not all steps or chemical processes are readily amenable to the use of PAT, but when appropriate, the PAT enables rapid and reliable analysis of the continuous processes that may contain materials that are highly hazardous, transient, or heterogeneous. So some of the PAT drivers that to use the PAT in continuous manufacturing are listed here. Like, it enables and speeds process development. It gives you data-rich experimentations, and it also enables process understanding in terms of understanding relationships between process variables. So basically, it enables efficient process development and optimizations. So the use of PAT could be helpful, in continuous manufacturing setups.
Now, certainly, it is a big discussion, and we had this on our last webinar, whether PET is enabling or the other way around, continuous manufacturing enables PET.
Yeah.
But I found interesting, and correct me if I'm wrong, but my impression was that here in continuous drug substance manufacturing, PET instruments are more used to detect endpoints rather than really following a continuous change of the process or kind of feedback loop application. But maybe I'm wrong.
I mean, you can use it for both to determine the endpoints as well. But I think in most of the settings, it is also important to analyze or understand the state of control of your processes. So like when you're using a PAT, you would see a steady. If you're using an IR, you can see a steady, line of certain components coming out as soon as there is a disturbance in any one of the pumps or any one of the in-process parameters, you could see a spike in going up and down. So that could also give you an understanding of whether your process is in control or not, and that could decide whether to collect or divert. So yeah, it has a wide applications. Depending on your processes, you can choose whether to use it as an endpoint or to control your process. Coming back to the PAT tools includes many measurements and instruments such as MIR, near IR, Raman, etc., flow NMR, etc. But it is important to remember that just as there is no single offline analytical tool that meets the requirements of process development needs of a product, there is no PAT or in situ analytical tool, or one PAT or analytical tool that will work for all the applications. So, for example, PAT is basically one set of analytical technique to consider when determining, which analytics are appropriate for process and product understanding, as well as monitoring and control. So, like as you can see here, the different types of analysis like FTIR, Raman, FPR, and PVM, and those analysis can be used as an inline, online, or at-line depending on the requirement of your process. So, like for example, the FBRM and PVM are typically used inline because that gives you a real-time information about the crystals, polymorph, or solubility, whatever that you're using it for, or the crystallization. The benchtop NMR can be used inline or at-line. So there are different types of analysis that are available, and you can choose whether to do it inline or online depending on the requirement of your process. The next table that you see is basically a typical. Can we go back to one slide, Richard? I'm sorry. Yeah. So this is where different stages of manufacturing and what typical PAT analytical tool is being used at that different stage of manufacturing. So for crystallizations, as I mentioned, FBRM, PVM is the most common PAT tool that can be used. For filtration, IR and Raman can be used to find out the solid water content.
It looks pretty similar to what I showed for oral solid dose applications on a high level. So there are commonalities, which I think is interesting to follow.
Yeah. So can we go on to the next slide, please?
Yes, of course.
So now we have seen different components from the pumps, reactors, PAT. Now let's move away from the technical aspects and try to understand. Everybody's talking about a PCM, but what exactly is happening in a commercial space in a wider world? So if you look at the continuous manufacturing adoption landscape in pharmaceuticals, the landscape is very fragmented, to be very honest. So like we have seen, there aren't many examples that or the drugs that have been approved by the FDA using these technologies. So like you can see, there are hardly 3 or 4 APIs that have been approved where they have used the continuous manufacturing that we know of. But there is a lot of things that are happening at the academia, R&D, and pilot scale level. So while there may not be as many APIs approved using the flow chemistry, we know that there is a lot going on in a API or drug substance space. So we wanted to show you some of the insights on the commercial side. So Richard, do you want to talk us through?
Yes, of course.
Your
happy also to see while watching to the first questions which are coming up to the right of the panel here. Of course, everyone is curious also about the justifications, the commercial justifications. But let's really look at the landscape, and thanks for kicking this off. And I'm if I have been asked frequently on conferences about the same thing, oh, where are we with continuous manufacturing? I started to invent my own kind of grid and landscape, and I will walk you all a little bit through to that. And just to explain what you see, it's a kind of a small chessboard, if you will. From left to the right, you have 3 columns. So one should represent companies implementing continuous manufacturing on a unit operation level. So not necessarily linking up 2 or 3 units, but just on one level, starting first with one unit operation to the other for whatever reason. Then there's what I call the big part is the powder to drug, the oral solid dosage section, which is very prominent the last 10, 15 years, pushing this continuous manufacturing paradigm forward. And then there's on the right side the drug substances or end-to-end applications even. And then if you go up from down to the higher level, this means which company use it on an R&D on a level only opportunistically right now, or which companies have pipeline products already. And then last but not least, those who have already commercial products out there. So, and these bubble sizes will give you just an indication how many products. It started also very late in the end of the 1990s and the early 2000s, where companies like Abbott Solix or Matrix, Mylan with HIV treatments came out to the market already based on melt extrusion or melt granulation technologies continuously, or MSD with their famous contraceptive product as a ring. And then later you saw companies like Novartis or Teva. It's many times mentioned that generics, what is the business case? But you see also early on generics adapted this technology with many products. Some names I'm not allowed to say, so I blanked them out. And you see, all the famous companies we have heard many stories about with their marketed products. I would say there's another group in this pipeline product section where we see products and first indications that they soon will get commercial products to the market, but they all started on this unit operation level. They started first on the left side, then moved to link unit operations together as they got more comfortable with it. And once they then get the first pipeline products, they move up to the group of those who have already successfully marketed some. And the blue is generics. So you see generics here and there. And this has mostly specific reasons if you look closer to these generics. And I bet this is true for drug substance as well as drug products. Usually those companies go into this section if they have some unit operation which makes problems on their batch processes, and they find out that continuous systems, whatever nature, can help them to tackle these quality and process issues. So it was mentioned in your first slide talking about enabling technologies. And I think this is what some really do not see clear enough. In some cases, continuous is an enabling technology. And so some of these products of the first successful launched systems you see are actually based because continuous was an enabling technology for their pharmacokinetics or for whatever reason. Yeah. So this is pretty interesting to see. And then you see this group of gray companies coming. These are all CDMOs. So CDMOs, of course, following their innovators on the journey. And some CDMOs already started to see continuous manufacturing as an expanded service for their clients. And yeah, as long as I follow that, and believe me, I'm doing this now since almost 30 years, this map get more and more complete. And you see then, and this is these dotted lines. These are the same products you have mentioned in your table before, Rohit. So of course, yeah, there are indications out there that drug substances have been successfully launched. And you see more dotted lines coming up, because what I found on the last couple of years following the continuous manufacturing conferences, etc., that you see more and more talks about drug substance manufacturing. And I think these are all big names who are looking into this technology, first opportunistically because they like to understand, but you see here and there the light bulbs going on and saying, hey, yes, hey, we found it's getting simpler. We can do simplification, process intensification. We can enable things which we haven't seen before as an opportunity. So yes, continuous manufacturing, whether for drug substance or drug products, is to me an enabling technology. And so I've just highlighted this here for the CDMOs out there listening to this talk. There is a big number, in this middle range, which I showed on my bubble chart, who are already talking to the ETT team or so, showing their cases. And we can expect that there are a lot of products coming out of this pipeline soon to the commercial market. So even biologics, we can see indications in this early approach. And I think the ETT mentioned already in August 2022 that they have about 46 proposals accepted in the early stage for this kind of applications. I think this industry is doing much more and much better than most recognize, because it's not always out there in the public space. And I think this is why it is so important to use webinars like that to showcase to the pharma world things are going on. And I will hand over to you, because you studied a little bit the literature's situation before I then go into number crunching again.
Yeah, so now since you have looked into the commercial landscape, let us quickly understand how a publication landscape looks like on the academia side. So one way to do is when we did a quick search of flow chemistry and continuous manufacturing, a sci-fi search, you can see for the past 20 years you can see a steady increase in the publications. However, most of these publications originate from the academia. And how do you know that? So when we filtered these results with the industry-based publications. So can you click on the next slide?
Yes.
So as you can see, there are hardly 600 publications. So basically, industry contributes less than 10% of the total publications in the last 20 years. Now, we do acknowledge that considerable number of publications or industry-based data may not be accessible in the public domain. However, identification of less than 10% of these studies can, basically support our applications. I do want to mention that this is not exhaustive, but we just wanted to gain an insight, of where industry and academia is going when you talk in terms of the continuous manufacturing. Now, if you go further details and try to only look at the publications that are related to the API or the drug substance, you see that there are approximately 270 studies that are accessible in the public domain concerning API continuous manufacturing. Now, we try to divide those those publications into three categories. So, Richard, if you can click on the next, and you can see that there are approximately 96 publications that talks about the API synthesis alone. So, in these publications, the people have actually published how a particular API can be synthesized using continuous technology. However, if you look at the commercial and pilot numbers, they are very low. So that's where a question comes in. But just wanted to tell you that this information provides partial insights into the efforts that are underway into incorporating the CM. However, as mentioned previously, the cost associated with implementing the continuous manufacturing is also a critical factor in comprehending the commercial landscape.
Yes.
So let us quickly delve into the understand how business case can significantly impact organizations who want to consider continuous manufacturing.
Yes, I'm happy to take on this because it's indeed not so easy to understand, and it's not a calculation you can do on a napkin. So I think similar to the technology itself, if you go into justifications for this technology, it has a lot of parameters to consider. And just recently, it was in April this year, I listened to a presentation of CEDAR FDA. And what I found also impressive, they kind of the first time, to me at least, to my understanding, raised that there's a Six Sigma part in it. So why is the Six Sigma element so important when we go into the justification? Because basically in your business case justification, it goes all down to the question, how can I improve my productivity? Yeah, I think if you really want to break it down from the top, it's always about productivity. You have to justify your investment, and productivity is key. And Six Sigma is basically the benchmark in the industries, in fine chemical industries, who always led to continuous manufacturing processes because of the quality arguments, etc. I will, beside others, I think that's what I found pretty enlightening. So what else is there? So if everyone out there is saying, okay, what segment you are living in with your company, that's important, because not each company is the same, even if you say we are manufacturing pharmaceuticals. So your business scenarios are different, and consequently also your business case justifications. You have to have a deep dive in your value chain in your own company, which differs dramatically because each company has his own setup, and each company implements this technology with different effects and side effects. This is not just something for the production. It's not just something in the lab. No, it hits on a final rollout the entire value adding chain of your company. And I think this is what I see sometimes really forgotten in these justifications. You cannot simply say, oh, what is my ROE on that? Yeah. Of course you can, but the question is, what is in your ROE observation for that? So we see clusters like innovators. What is their business driver for it? You have to find your sweet spot because it drives your company's competitiveness. And then I think this is what fast movers have understood in the early times. This is why you see mainly innovators are pushing for this, because they see opportunities for their supply chain, time to market, and for their pipeline. For CRDMOs, CDMOs, that's basically their customership. So they want to help on tech transfers, clinical supply, etc. And if then the other groups like the OTCs or the generics are coming in, they have a different perspective to that. They want to have, of course, also supply chain agility. This is the same, but they are looking much more to the productivity piece because of their price and cost situation. Yeah. Let's now have a look. So what I use and what I suggest and what I give a lot of seminars on is using overall equipment effectiveness, OEE, as a measure. You have parts in this equation: availability, performance, and yield. So yield is important. Whenever I listen to presentations of continuous drug substance, one of the big highlights, every presenter points out that we could increase dramatically the yield of our process by applying continuous manufacturing principles. And that's the same whether for drug substance or drug product, however the output is defined. The performance, of course, is how smartly you engineer your system. And so you have two big elements who are important. So if I have unit operations and a batch system, and this might be not new for anyone out there, but each of these unit operations have an OEE already on their own. So if you just have a batch process, you handle one after the other, after the next, where you do tests, the overall efficiency is very low. So, and that's the point. If I go to continuous applications, these unit operations work one in another, and consequently, the output and the OE is getting higher. How do we see this in numbers now? We use net present value, which is basically your return rate of the investment, but not just for 1 year. This is, I think, another thing, another mistake I see many times, that people underestimate the influence of the time over their investment. So we compare with the net present value, the batch as well as the Conti setup. So let's say a scenario is to say, I have this batch technology and I compare a continuous setup next to that. I just look at the differences. What are the differences in the investment? You mentioned already it might be initially much higher, but the question is how this plays out over the time. And then on the other hand, you have what are the productivity benefits? So what can I sell? What I can have as a capacity over the time, and how can I leverage my initial investment to the year one or so on. So by this comparison, you see in the scenario technique, which is similar to what everybody knows as modeling, you can see which are the effects hitting your business case most impactful. And if it goes about depreciation methods, although they play a role here, because you hear many times that people say, oh, we have these assets already in place. Does it make sense to buy something new? Yeah, I mean, you have different forms of depreciation methods also in certain countries. So in a nutshell, you will get a graph. You have maybe the batch size over your net present value. You say, I run a batch system with an OEE of 50, which would be very, very optimistic. And then I say, I have a Conti system. It's the same OEE. Okay, you see the difference here, and that's the investment. So considering that the Conti system has a higher investment, it makes, of course, a negative impact of your net present value. But if you run a Conti system on the same level as a batch system, you made a mistake. You have to, of course, see what is the highest possible OEE you can get out of your Conti system to make the benefit. And I think this paradigm shift in mindset is what needs to be looked at if you compare your assets and then also scaling up or scaling out. Another nice question. I would say the paradigm change also here is you do not scale up, actually you scale out. Before investing in huge, bigger reactors, why not doing it with a second set? Just being more flexible and agile at the same time. So there are scenarios, and this is just to show you how this then could be look like. We support companies on this way to define their best sweet spot. And with that, I hope I gave some insights on how you can do that. And I also want to point out finally that it doesn't matter if this is a drug substance or a drug product at the business case level.
Yeah, so thank you, Richard. I think that was really helpful, and I hope there was a question regarding the generic. How can you make a business case for a generic company? I hope you were able to answer the question. So now we have seen, there's a lot of things going on. You have seen the commercial landscape, the people are doing, but still it seems that there are still challenges when it comes to implementing the continuous manufacturing. So we try to categorize those challenges as industry based and the regulatory based challenges. So for industries, of course, the investment is first and foremost a challenge for the industries. They still do not know whether to invest in this technology because the upfront investment is actually high. But then if you consider what Richard had just talked about, or if you consider the time factor, you need to understand how it will help to compensate that ROI. Most of them are batch infrastructures. So like managing the existing infrastructure is very much important with respect in addition to establishing the new technologies. And there are other challenges like managing the data integrity, because you're using much sophisticated PAT tools and soft sensors. In terms of the regulatory challenges, it is important for regulators to have expertise in these technologies. Since we live in the global regulatory environment, establishing the harmonizing the standards and the guidance is another challenge for the regulators. And of course, to address these challenges, it requires a collaboration between industry, academia, and the regulators so that these challenges can be lowered. So now we have talked about these challenges. Now, someone would ask, what USP and Pharmatech is doing, to address those challenges. So like in next couple of slides, we'll show you what are some of the efforts that USP and Pharmatech is doing. So like we have the Continuous Manufacturing Knowledge Center. I'm not sure how many of you know, but it's an online platform wherein experts across industry, academia, regulatory, government agencies can come together and problem solve, challenges related to continuous manufacturing. So it's a free to sign up. So you can if you want to get involved, there are ways, not only ways to benefit from this platform, but also ways to give back to the community based in various ways, from sharing experiences to contributing the resources. And to do so, please log into cmkcusp.org and sign up for free. The next another way we are assisting the manufacturers who are considering adopting the PCM is through the technical guides. So we had our first technical guide on control strategy for solid oral dose published last year. And we have two more upcoming technical guides that will be published soon on process modeling and in vitro dissolution modeling. So stay tuned for that. These technical guides are also free to access. So you can just go onto our USP website and download this document that will help you understand more about these technologies and onto the regulatory part.
Yeah, thanks. I just can highlight for everyone out there. I think this knowledge center is really great, and as many more people as possible are signing up and contributing, as I think as more is in for everyone. Yeah.
And of course, the Pharmatech solutions, Richard.
Yeah, as my part, I mean, we usually start our support with customers in the CMC section, because we also see that this technology is more an enabling technology. Business case implementation strategies going down the way to digital twins, process modeling services, deciding what is the best PET application, and your real-time release testing strategy, developing control strategies, and last but not least, I think regulatory filing support in a nutshell. Yeah. So I think, Rohit, to wrap this up, I see already a lot of questions, and I think that's now the exciting part, to see how we can tackle those questions together.
Yeah, and just to add that, I just came to know that those two technical guides have already been published. So they have been recently published. I wasn't aware of that, but you'll be able to download that two technical guides as well, along with the first one. Okay, so so I see a question that says, how do you make continuous manufacturing multi-purpose?
Yes.
Oh, is there a single solution? I think this is a very interesting question, and I think most of the industries have this kind of questions when it comes in terms of API continuous manufacturing. To be very honest, and based on my experience, there is no universal solution that is available for API continuous manufacturing, because that each chemical transformation is unique, and the requirements for the reaction, each reaction is unique. So like, it's very difficult to have a universal solution. However, I've seen people having, instead of having a one dedicated continuous manufacturing line, people tend to have the modules. So like, you can have different modules for pumps, for reactors, for downstream equipments. So like, for example, you can have a pump module that has HPLC pumps, combination of gear pumps, HPLC pumps, or peristaltic pumps. You can have a reactor modules of PFR, CSTRs, and then you can have downstream modules like for distillation, continuous distillation, drying, and filtration. And based on the requirement, based on your requirement of your chemical transformations, you can then basically plug and play those modules. And then that's how the industry have been using, and I think that's the way forward for for the answer to this question. So
I can elaborate on this as well. So I think there's a big discussion and initiatives from a couple of vendors for this industry to more modularized solutions that you can basically plug and play. I think, of course, this is a complex undertaking and it's easier said than done. But I think the vendor side has already a couple of good solutions to make this possible. Yeah.
So the next question is, we are interested in the notion of continuous as an enabling technology. I think Richard, you had talked about this, but just in terms of when we say enabling technology, at least for me, since I'm a chemist, I can see that there are certain chemistry that have not been performed that well in batch chemistries. Like for example, take photochemistry. Photochemistry is something is very difficult to scale up in batch. I know people have been doing photochemistry. It's not something new. However, those who have scaled up the photochemical process would understand challenges with respect to the light absorption, the mixing and all those things. So if you scale if you want to do a photochemistry in continuous, I think there are so many options. You have different options of lamps, LEDs, mercury vapor lamps, and you can do that with greater light absorption, and that's how it's basically is enabling like those kind of transformations to be carried out easily. On the other side, the reactions like lithiations, they have also been exothermic, and there have been a lot of incidences while scaling up those chemistries on industry of accidents. But using the continuous manufacturing, one can easily do those hazardous transformations safely into the continuous manufacturing. So in that sense, I think it's an enabling technology that I would say. Richard, if you want to add anything.
No, this is also when it comes to difficult to solve drugs. Yeah, so you use also, let's say, drug solubility enhancement based on continuous twin screw systems, for example, which are also kind of important to mention here. Yeah? So pharmacokinetics can be also positively be influenced by implying certain continuous manufacturing processes. Okay, the next one goes about business case calculations, how to make business case calculations. I mean, I showed you one approach. Of course, there are many more. Depends a little bit on what your company is used to. But I would say also capturing the second question right after that, when you do this business case assessment and comparison of products, it doesn't matter if this is a generics or not. It is about the value of the product versus the volume of the product. So usually you see you have high value products, and they also make sense to transfer for low volume applications, almost like rare disease products. As well, the other way around, if you have a high volume but maybe lower value of a product, you make the business case due to the volume and the productivity. So there's not a straight answer. It depends, and whatever this generics look like. Shall we consider steps for homogenization in PCM linked to the batch size? What would you say, Rohit?
I'm not sure if I get this question. I mean,
steps for homogenization. I mean, you have maybe homogenization steps in the process train. Maybe this is meant by static mixers or kind of. I'm not sure as well.
yeah.
Because the batch size definition is independent from what are the steps you use. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure I get the question, but
Okay, then
I think homogenization is mostly a part of drug product manufacturing. So I'm not sure how,
yeah.
what does that mean? But anyway,
let's go to the next.
How to perform the drug substance through AI with compliance. Oh, I think that's still new. I mean, like there are a lot of efforts that has been going on for using an AI on the laboratory scale. So you can see many publications wherein the self optimization of reactions have been happening. So there are equipments available in the market that basically you can basically automate your process and have that self optimization kind of closed loop optimizations with your algorithms and sets of equipments and the data and the PAT tools. So that has been happening on the laboratory scale, although I'm not sure about if something like that has already been on a scale up level. So which I'm not sure about that, but I know there's a lot of thing that has been happening on the laboratory scale. Now, how to perform it, it's a broader topic. So I mean, there are a lot of publications. So if you log into our CMKC, you'll be able to see many publications that are related to how people have been using AI and machine learning to optimize their reaction processes with the commercial available flow reactors and using this different language models and all those things.